At the orphanage, a millionaire enters with his son to adopt a brother, but is faced with a frightening sight. 3 boys identical to his son stare at him as if the past is coming back to haunt him. Years ago, his wife gave birth to 4 babies, but only one would survive. Now faced with this disturbing mystery, he must discover the truth before it's too late. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, tell us which city you're watching us from, and we'll keep going. The Müller mansion was imposing, its perfectly manicured gardens a stark contrast to the grey sky of that autumn morning. In the main office, Oliver Müller, 42, watched out the window as his son Luca played alone on the swing. The 10-year-old had everything a child could want: expensive toys, state-of-the-art video games, designer clothes. But there was something in his eyes that Oliver couldn't ignore, a quiet sadness that none of his businesses or bank accounts could fix. "Sir, breakfast is served," announced Greta, the housekeeper who had worked for the family for over a decade. Oliver just nodded, not looking away from the window. "Greta, do you think he's happy?" The housekeeper approached and observed Luca for a few moments before answering. "He has everything he needs, sir." "But not everything he wants," Oliver added, turning to face her. "He misses company." Since Isabel's premature departure during childbirth, Oliver has dedicated every minute of his life to ensuring that Luca has not lacked for anything material. He has become one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country, expanding his technology empire into international markets. His companies have revolutionized the country's digital sector, but his greatest investment has always been in Luca. But as he watched his son sit alone on that swing, Oliver finally admitted to himself what he had been trying to ignore. Money couldn't buy real companionship. That night, after putting Luca to bed, Oliver stood by his son's bedside, watching him silently. On the bedside table, a framed photo of Isabel seemed to be watching them. She had the same brown eyes as Luca, the same shy smile that appeared rarely. "He doesn't have any friends at school," Oliver confessed quietly, as if talking to the photo. "The other parents don't let their kids come here. They say I have too. Much money that it's dangerous." The silence of the room was his only response. Oliver ran his hand through his hair in a nervous gesture that Luca had inherited from him. "What do I do, Bella? How can I give him what he really needs?" It was at that moment, looking at his sleeping son, that the idea came to him. Clear, simple, and at the same time, frightening. Oliver knew what he had to do. The next morning during breakfast, Oliver watched his son pick at his food without interest. "Aren't you hungry, champ?" Luca shrugged, pushing the scrambled eggs around on his plate. "I asked to switch seats in class," the boy said without looking up. "I wanted to sit with Noah, but the teacher said I couldn't." "Why?" "Because Noah already has a partner, everyone in the room has a partner except me." Oliver felt his heart sink. He reached across the table and touched his son's arm. "What do you think about having a brother?" Luca's fork stopped in midair. His eyes, so similar to Isabel's, widened. "A brother? What do you mean?" "Someone to play with, to share stories with, to be your companion." "Are you getting married again?" The question took Oliver by surprise. He had never considered the possibility of rebuilding his love life after losing Isabel. "No, Luca. I'm thinking about adoption." The word hung in the air between them. Luca dropped his fork onto his plate, making a metallic clang that echoed through the dining room. "Can we choose?" Oliver smiled, relieved by his son's positive reaction. "It doesn't work that way, but we could visit an orphanage and meet some kids. What do you think?" Luca's face lit up in a way Oliver hadn't seen happen in a long time. "Can we go today?" 3 days later, the driver parked the black Range Rover in front of the Luz do Amanhã orphanage, located in a quiet neighborhood in the South Zone. The yellow 2-story building looked well kept, with a small garden at the entrance and colorful designs on the windows. Oliver squeezed Luca's hand as they climbed the few steps to the front door. He felt nervous, as if he were about to close a big deal, but he knew that what was at stake was far more valuable than any $1-million contract. The door was opened by a tall woman of about 45, with brown hair tied in a severe bun and piercing green eyes. She wore a grey blazer over a simple white blouse and carried a clipboard. "Mr. Miller, welcome. I'm Helena Keller, director of the orphanage. We've been waiting for you." His voice was formal, professional, but there was something in his eyes that Oliver couldn't read. Tension, perhaps, or a recognition he didn't understand. "This is my son, Luca," Oliver introduced, gently pushing the boy forward. Helena bent down slightly, bringing herself to eye level with Luca. Her expression softened for a moment, but then returned to her professional mask. "Nice to meet you, Luca. We have several children looking forward to meeting you." As they entered the main hall, where some children were gathered, Helena seemed increasingly tense. Her eyes scanned the room as if she were looking for something or someone. "The children are in the recreation room. This way, please." As they walked down the hallway decorated with children's drawings, Oliver noticed that Helena was constantly checking her watch. Her behavior seemed strange for someone who was supposed to be interested in fostering adoptions. When they reached the door to the recreation room, Helena hesitated. "Mr. Miller, I must warn you that the adoption process is long and complex. I don't want you to get your hopes up." "We're just getting to know each other, Mrs. Keller," Oliver interrupted gently. "We know it takes time." Helena nodded, but continued to partially block the entrance. It was at that moment that the door opened completely from the inside, and a boy of approximately 10 years old appeared. "Aunt Helena, Professor Sophia said you were here with Vis—" The boy stopped mid-sentence, his eyes fixed on Luca. And Luca, in turn, seemed to be looking into a mirror. The two boys were identical. Not just similar, but uncannily alike. The same brown eyes, the same shape of their faces, the same light brown hair. Even the way they tilted their heads slightly to the side was the same. "Elias!" Helena exclaimed, instinctively placing herself between the boy and the visitors. "Come back inside, please." But it was too late. Oliver had already seen it, and what he saw left him breathless. Elias looked at Helena in confusion, then at Luca again as if trying to understand what was happening. Instinctively, he reached for his hair and nervously adjusted it, exactly the same gesture Luca did when he was anxious. "Who is he?" Elias asked, his voice a perfect echo of Luca's. Oliver took a step forward, ignoring Helena's attempt to block his path. "Who is that boy?" "He's my adopted son," Helena replied quickly, placing her hand on Elias's shoulder. "Please come back." "To the living room, dear." Elias hesitated, his eyes still fixed on Luca, who seemed equally mesmerized by the similarity between them. "Are you related?" Elias asked, ignoring Helena's request. Luca stepped forward. "I have no relatives, just my father." Oliver remained motionless, his gaze alternating between Elias and Helena. The orphanage director maintained a defensive, almost protective posture, but her eyes revealed a fear that did not match the situation. "Elias is not available for adoption," Helena said firmly. "Perhaps we can meet other children who—" "Why not?" Oliver interrupted, his calm voice a contrast to the storm of questions building in his mind. "Why isn't he available?" "As I said, he is my adopted son. I legally adopted Elias 10 years. Hago? 10 years. Exactly Luca's age. The coincidence was too disturbing to ignore." "Dad, he looks like me," Luca whispered, tugging on Oliver's coat sleeve. Elias, for his part, seemed fascinated. "Do you play soccer? What's your team?" "Corinthians," Luca replied immediately. "Me too." Helena cleared her throat, interrupting the interaction. "Mr. Muller, I think we should reschedule this visit. Today is not a good day." Oliver felt that there was something deeply wrong with the situation. The similarity between the boys was inexplicable, and Helena's nervous behavior only increased his suspicions. "Okay," he agreed, deciding not to force the issue at this point. "We'll come back another day." On the way back home, Luca kept talking about Elias. "Dad, did you see? He looks just like me. Even the way we talk is similar. Could he be my brother?" Luca's innocent question echoed in Oliver's mind like thunder. Could it be possible? No, he had been present at the birth. Isabel had only given birth to a boy. The doctors had been clear about that. "Luca, Sometimes people who aren't related can look alike, Oliver replied, trying to sound casual. As his mind worked frantically. But he's the same age as me, Dad. And he has the same way of playing with his hair when he's nervous. Oliver knew he should calm his son down, dissuade him from this crazy idea, but the truth is that he himself couldn't stop thinking about the striking similarity between the boys. That night, after putting Luca to bed, Oliver went to his office and opened the old box where he kept Isabel's mementos. Among the letters and photographs, he found what he was looking for: Luca's birth certificate and the medical report of the birth. According to the documents, Luca was born on April 12, 2015, at the University Hospital, after 38 weeks of gestation. The birth was complicated by severe hemorrhage, which led to Isabel's death hours later. The report, signed by Dr. Hugo Gartner, mentioned the birth of a healthy boy weighing 2.8 kilos. There was no mention of multiple babies or complications beyond the hemorrhage. Oliver closed his eyes, remembering that terrible night. He had been in the waiting room the entire time. When he finally got to see his son, it was too late for Isabel. The doctor handed Luca to her, saying that he was all that was left of his wife. There had never been any mention of another baby. But the resemblance between Luca and Elias was unmistakable. It wasn't just a physical coincidence. It was something deeper, almost as if they shared the same essence. The next morning, Oliver called his lawyer, Adrian Hoff, who had been with him for over 15 years in all legal matters. Adrian, I need you to find out everything about a woman named Helena Keller. She is the director of the Light of Tomorrow orphanage. Any problems with the adoption? I don't know. Yet just do it discreetly, okay? 3 days later, Adrian arrived at the mansion with a thick folder in his hands. His normally impassive face showed concern. I found some interesting things about Helena Keller, he said, opening the folder on his desk. She worked as a head nurse at University Hospital for almost 15 years. Oliver felt a chill run down his spine. The same hospital where Luca was born. Adrian nodded. Exactly, and she quit her job exactly 1 week after Luca was born. Interestingly, 3 months later she took over as director of the Tomorrow's Light Orphanage, which was on the verge of closing due to financial problems. How did she get the resources to keep the orphanage running? That's the most curious part. There was an anonymous deposit of $5 million into the institution's account shortly after Helena took office. The money was used to renovate the building and improve the facilities. Oliver felt his heart race. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, forming a disturbing picture. There's one more thing, Adrian continued hesitantly. Helena officially registered 3 children as her adopted children a few months after leaving the hospital. Elias, Matteo, and Leon. All 3 were born on the same day as Luca, according to the documents. The revelation hit Oliver like a punch. 3 boys, all the same age as Luca, all under the care of a nurse who worked at the hospital where Isabel gave birth and then mysteriously left. I need to see those boys, Oliver muttered. Oliver, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, we need to proceed with caution. If it's true, we're talking about a serious crime. I'm not accusing anyone yet, Adrian. I just need to be sure. The next day, Oliver returned to the orphanage, this time alone. He arrived at the same time the children were at school, hoping to find Helena without the distraction of the boys. The receptionist, a friendly middle-aged woman, informed him that the director was in an off-site meeting. When is she coming back? Probably not until tomorrow, sir. Is there anything I can help you with? Oliver shook his head, but instead of leaving, he asked to use the bathroom. Once inside the building, he took advantage of the receptionist's distraction on the phone to explore the hallways. On the wall next to Helena's office, he found a mural with photographs of the children from the orphanage. His eyes immediately located Elias, smiling next to 2 other boys. Time seemed to freeze. The 3 of them were identical, not just similar but the same, as if they were the same person photographed from slightly different angles. In the photograph, all 3 were wearing soccer uniforms with their names printed on the back: Elias, Matteo, and Leon. Oliver felt his legs go weak. It was impossible not to see the resemblance to Luca. The four boys looked like carbon copies of each other, with small variations that only highlighted the fundamental similarity between them. Hearing footsteps, Oliver quickly took a picture of the mural with his cell phone and returned to the reception, thanking the receptionist before leaving. That night, unable to sleep, Oliver stared at the photo he had taken. The more he looked, the more convinced he became that there was something deeply wrong with the story he had been told 10 years ago. Determined to find out the truth, Oliver hired a private laboratory to do a DNA test. All he needed were samples from the other boys. The operation would have to be delicate and discreet. A week later, Oliver got an unexpected opportunity. The orphanage was organizing a charity fair open to the public, and he offered to be one of the sponsors. During the event, he would take the opportunity to get closer to the boys and somehow collect the necessary samples. On the day of the fair, Oliver arrived early, accompanied by Luca, who was excited to see Elias again. Helena, visibly tense with their presence, tried to keep them away from the areas where the three boys would be. "Mr. Müller, I thought you had given up on adoption," she said with a forced smile. "I haven't given up. I'm just reconsidering some options," he replied, surveying the room. Luca was very enthusiastic about the idea of helping the children at the orphanage. Helena nodded, but her eyes showed no sign of concern. "The children are very happy with your generous donation. We will make good use of the funds." "I'm sure so. Where are the kids? Luca would like to meet some more." "They're in the backyard, taking part in recreational activities," Helena replied reluctantly. When they reached the playground, Oliver immediately spotted the three identical boys playing soccer with other children. Luca saw them too, and before Oliver could stop him, he ran towards them. "Elias, remember me?" The three boys turned around simultaneously. The scene was surreal. Four practically identical faces, staring at each other with expressions that varied between surprise, curiosity, and distrust. Helena quickly intervened. "Luca, it's good to see you again. Elias, Matteo, and Leon are a little busy right now. Why don't you meet the other children?" But it was too late. The four boys were already gathered in a circle, watching each other in fascination. "Are you triplets?" Luca asked, looking from one to the other. "Yes," replied Leon, the most talkative of the three. "And you look like our brother too." "That's really weird," Matteo commented, the more serious one. "Are you sure you're not adopted?" The innocent question struck Oliver like a bolt of lightning. "Luca isn't adopted," Oliver replied, approaching the group of boys. "I was there when he was born." Helena quickly intervened. "Boys, snacks are served in the covered area. Why don't you go join the other children?" "But we just met Luca," protested Elias without taking his eyes off his new friend. "Can we play some more?" Leon asked. Oliver saw the opportunity. "Why not let them play? In the meantime, we can talk about donating to the orphanage, Mrs. Keller." Helena hesitated, clearly torn between the need to keep the boys separate and the importance of Oliver's financial support. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but only half an hour, and stay where we can see you." The four boys ran toward the court, already planning the game. Oliver watched as they moved in sync, as if they shared not only the same genes, but also the same thoughts. "They look a lot alike, don't you think?" Oliver commented casually as they walked to a quieter area. Helena kept her gaze fixed straight ahead. "Children that age tend to look alike, Mr. Müller." "Not like that, it's almost like they're brothers." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken accusation. Helena stopped walking, her body tense like a rope about to snap. "What exactly are you insinuating, Mr. Müller?" "I'm not implying anything, Mrs. Keller. I'm just noting an extraordinary coincidence." Helena stared at him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Coincidences happen every day." "Yes, they do. Just like you happened to be working at the university hospital when my son was born. And you happened to quit a week later. And you happened to adopt 3 boys who were born on the same day as Luca, all of whom bear a striking resemblance." Helena's face lost all color. "Have you been investigating me?" "Investigating?" "No, just trying to understand why my son has 3 perfect lookalikes in his care." Helena glanced quickly at the boys who were playing happily, then at Oliver again. Her posture changed, as if she had made a decision. Mr. Muller, life sometimes puts us in impossible situations, choices that no one should have to make. What kind of choice did you make, Mrs. Keller? One that allowed me to sleep at night, she replied enigmatically. If you'll excuse me, I need to supervise the other children. Before Oliver could insist, Helena hurried away toward a group of younger children. He stood still, watching her walk away, increasingly convinced that he had found a crucial clue to a secret buried 10 years ago. While the boys played, Oliver got what he needed: a glass of water that Elias had used, a tissue that Matteo had used to wipe the sweat from, his face, and a piece of gum that Leon had discarded. All of them were carefully stored in separate plastic bags. The next day, Oliver delivered the samples to the lab, along with a sample of Luca's DNA. The results would take at least a week. During those days, Oliver could barely sleep. His mind was full of possibilities, all of them disturbing. If Luca and the 3 boys were really brothers, how could that be possible? Why had he never been told that Isabel had given birth to 4 children instead of 1? And most importantly, why would anyone separate brothers like that? Meanwhile, Luca kept talking about his new friends. Dad, Elias plays soccer just like me, and Leon loves comic books just like me. And Matteo, he's quieter, but he plays the guitar. Can we visit them again? Oliver smiled, hiding his concern. Sure, son. Soon. On the 5th day of waiting, Oliver received an anonymous call. Mr. Muller, let the past be buried. It's better for everyone, especially the boys. The voice was distorted, impossible to identify. Who's speaking? What do you know about this? Oliver asked, alarmed. The call has been terminated. That same afternoon, Oliver received another call, this time from the lab. Mr. Miller, I regret to inform you that there was a problem with the samples you sent us. What kind of problem? They disappeared from our system. We don't know how this was possible, but someone gained access to the lab and took all the samples and records related to your case. Oliver felt a chill run down his spine. Someone was monitoring his steps, trying to keep him from finding out the truth. This only made him more determined. Determined to find answers, Oliver began searching for people who had worked at the university hospital for the past 10 years. Most of the staff had already left, but through contacts and generous offers, he managed to locate Donna Ingrid, a retired nurse who had been working in the maternity ward when Isabel gave birth. They met at a discreet cafe in the city center. Mrs. Ingrid, a woman of about 70 years old, seemed nervous. I don't know if I should be here, Mr. Muller. I signed a confidentiality agreement. We're talking about my children, Mrs. Ingrid. Please, if you know anything. The lady sighed deeply, looking around as if she feared being observed. I was on duty that night. I remember her well. Your wife. So young. So beautiful. What happened in that delivery room? Mrs. Ingrid hesitated, fidgeting nervously with her teacup. There was confusion, a lot of commotion. It wouldn't normally be like this, but specialists were called in at the last minute. Why? Oliver pressed. Because there were 4 babies, not just 1. Oliver felt the world spin around him. Although he had already suspected it, hearing the confirmation was devastating. Quadruplets? Mrs. Ingrid nodded. They were born very small, premature. 3 of them didn't move. She swallowed hard. Or we thought they didn't. It all happened so fast your wife was losing a lot of blood. What do you mean, we thought? I heard the doctors say there had been a mistake that could never be revealed. Mrs. Ingrid looked Oliver straight in the eye. After that, I was taken out of the room. When I came back, I was told that only 1 baby had survived. And you believed it. I had no choice. Dr. Hugo, the head obstetrician, was nervous, agitated. I had never seen him like that. And then a few days later, I found Helena crying in the supply room. She just said, we did a terrible thing. The next week, she resigned. Oliver leaned back in his chair, trying to process what he had just heard. Miss Ingrid, I need to find Dr. Hugo Gartner. Do you know where he is? The lady shook her head. He also left the hospital not long after. I heard he left the country. After talking to Donna Ingrid, Oliver intensified his search for Dr. Hugo Gartner. Through his contacts and resources, he discovered that the doctor had left the country less than a month after Luca was born, moving to Portugal and later to Canada. Following this lead, Oliver hired a private investigator who specialized in international cases. 2 weeks later, the investigator sent a report. Dr. Hugo Gartner was living under the name Jacob Sinclair in a small town near Vancouver, working as a university professor, no longer as a doctor. Without thinking twice, Oliver boarded the first available flight to Canada. The small wooden house on the outskirts of Vancouver was too modest for someone who had been a respected obstetrician in the country. Oliver studied the place for a few hours before approaching. When he finally knocked on the door, he was greeted by a middle-aged man with grey hair and a tired look. Upon seeing Oliver, the man turned pale. "I knew this day would come," he said, in Portuguese. "I just didn't expect it to take this long." "Dr. Gartner?" "No one has called me that in a long time." He opened the door wider. "Come in, we have a lot to talk about." Dr. Hugo Gartner's home was simple but cozy. Medical books piled high on the shelves revealed that, despite having abandoned his profession, he had never stopped studying. On the walls there were no photos, no reminders of his home country or his previous life. "Coffee?" the doctor offered, his hands shaking slightly as he filled 2 cups. Oliver waved it away. "I didn't come here to socialize, doctor. I came for answers." Hugo nodded, sitting down heavily in a worn armchair. "I suppose you found out about the other boys." "Luca's brothers," Oliver corrected. "My sons." The doctor closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. "Your wife gave birth to quadruplets, 4 identical boys, all very small, as is common in multiple pregnancies. The situation was critical. Isabel was hemorrhaging heavily, and we needed to act quickly to save her." He paused, sipping his coffee to buy time. Oliver remained silent, giving him room to continue. "The babies were born in quick succession. The first one, Luca, cried immediately. The other 3 did not. They were pale and unresponsive. We followed protocol for neonatal resuscitation, but we got no response." "So?" Oliver pressed when the silence stretched on. "We declared the 3 babies dead while the main team tried to stop Isabel's bleeding. I was signing the certificates when—" Hugo swallowed hard. "When I heard a faint cry. It was the second. Baby starting to breathe. Soon after the other 2 did too." Oliver felt a wave of anger rise within him. "And you didn't tell me?" "The problem is that we had already officially declared their death. It was already registered in the system." "So, what? All we had to do was correct the mistake." Hugo shook his head. "It wasn't that simple. The hospital was under investigation for negligence in another case. A scandal like that, declaring babies who were actually alive dead, would destroy the institution's reputation and end our careers. So you decided to hide 3 children from their legitimate father to save your careers?" Oliver stood up, unable to contain his indignation. "How could you do that?" "It wasn't a conscious decision, it was panic." Hugo defended himself. "It all happened so quickly. Isabel was not resisting, you were devastated. We thought it would be easier for you to deal with a loss and a child than with a loss and 4 premature babies who might not survive." "It wasn't your decision to make," Oliver roared. "They were my children." "I know," Hugo murmured, defeated. "It was the biggest mistake of my life. By the time I realized the gravity of what we had done, it was too late. The babies had already been taken." "Taken where?" "Helena refused to participate in the scheme. She said she would not allow the babies to be put up for adoption separately, as we had planned. In an impulsive move, she took them with her. We later learned that she took over the management of the orphanage and registered them as her adopted children." Oliver tried to process the enormity of the revelation. How could they keep this secret for 10 years? "The hospital director paid Helena to keep quiet. As for me, I ran away. I changed my identity, my country. I abandoned everything. The guilt consumes me every day." Oliver looked out the window, watching the grey Canadian sky. He thought of Luca, alone for so long, when he could have grown up with his brothers. He thought of the other 3 boys growing up in an orphanage, unaware of their true origins. "I'll fix this," he said finally. "I'll reunite my children." "Oliver," Hugo called when he was already at the door. "Helena may have done something wrong, but she loved those boys as if they were her own. She saved them." "Of a destiny of your own making," Oliver replied coldly. "I hope you've made good use of those 10 years of exile, Doctor, because when I'm done, everyone involved in this conspiracy will face justice." Back on the field, Oliver went straight to his lawyer's office. Adrian listened attentively to the full story, taking notes and occasionally asking questions. "We have a solid case," the attorney concluded. "With Dr. Gartner's testimony and the DNA tests we can redo, there is no doubt that we will get custody of the boys." "What will happen to Helena?" Oliver asked. "She will face serious charges, misappropriation of funds, ideological falsification. Even if she claims good intentions, we are talking about years in prison." Oliver stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city throbbed, oblivious to the unfolding drama. "She raised them for 10 years, he murmured. "To them, she is a mother." "Oliver, don't get carried away by sentimentality now. She participated in a scheme that deprived you of your children for a decade. They grew up in an orphanage when they could have had all the opportunities Luca had." "No, Adrian, but I can't ignore the fact that she protected them when she could have simply abandoned them to their fate." That night during dinner, Luca noticed his father's silence. "Did something happen, Dad? You've been acting strange since you got back from your trip." Oliver looked at his son, his only child so far, and felt the weight of the truth he would soon have to reveal. How could he explain to a 10-year-old that his entire life was about to change, that he had 3 brothers he had never met, that everything he knew about his birth was a lie? "Luca, do you remember when you asked if Elias, Matteo, and Leon could be your brothers?" The boy nodded, his eyes shining with curiosity. "What if I told you they really are your brothers? Not just lookalikes, but real brothers?" Luca's eyes widened. "Seriously? How is that possible?" Oliver took a deep breath. "It's a complicated story, son, but yes, you are brothers. In fact, you are quadruplets. You were born on the same day to the same mother, your mother, Isabel. But why do they live in the orphanage? Why don't they live with us?" The innocent question struck Oliver like an arrow. "Because some people made a very serious mistake. They told me that only you had survived, when in fact all of you were fine." Luca processed the information slowly, his face going from surprise to confusion, and finally to excitement. "So, are they going to come live with us? I'm going to have 3 brothers? That's amazing, Dad." Oliver smiled, touched by his son's reaction. If only everything were as simple as Luca imagined. "That's what I'm going to try to do, son, but it might not be easy. They don't know me. They don't know that I'm their father." "But you're going to tell, aren't you? And Aunt Helena, does she know?" Oliver hesitated. "Yes, she knows. In fact, she's the one who's been taking care of them all these years." "So she's cool, huh? She took care of my brothers." Luca's childish logic made Oliver rethink his approach. To the boys, Helena was the only mother they had ever known. Tearing them away from her in such a traumatic way could cause irreparable damage. The next day, Oliver asked for an official meeting with Helena at the orphanage. When he arrived, she was already waiting for him in her office, visibly tense. "Mr. Miller, I imagine this isn't just an adoption visit anymore." "No, Mrs. Keller. I was with Dr. Hugo Gartner in Canada." Helena paled, gripping the edge of the table. "So you know." "I know my wife gave birth to quadruplets. I know 3 of them were wrongly declared dead. And I know you brought them here and raised them as your own." Helena didn't try to deny it. "What do you intend to do?" "What any father would do. I want my children back." Tears began to stream down Helena's face. "They are my children too, Mr. Muller. Maybe not biologically, but in every other sense. I was the one who rocked them when they cried at night, who held their hands when they took their first steps, who comforted them when they had nightmares. "And I'm grateful for that," Oliver replied, standing firm. "But now it's time to right this wrong. They deserve to know their true story, to grow up with their brother, to have the same opportunities. They're happy here," Helena argued desperately. "They have friends, they have stability. A change like that could traumatize them. I will do everything gradually, with psychological support, but they will come home with me and Luca." Helena stared at him, her eyes red from crying. "What about me? Am I just going to disappear from their lives?" Oliver hadn't thought about that. Despite his initial anger, he was beginning to understand that the situation was more complex than he had imagined. Helena had made a serious mistake. Yes, but she had also dedicated a decade of her life to the boys. "We can find an arrangement," he said finally. "Something that doesn't completely deprive them of your presence." Helena shook her head in disbelief. "You are more generous than I expected, Mr. Müller. This is not about generosity. This is about the well-being of my children. All 4 of them." When Oliver left the orphanage that day, there was an initial agreement. He would officially meet Elias, Matteo, and Leon as his biological children under the supervision of a team of psychologists. The transition would be gradual, with frequent visits to establish a bond before any permanent change. What Oliver didn't know was that Helena had made a desperate decision. That very night, she packed the 3 boys' bags. The next morning, Oliver received a frantic call from Helena's assistant. "Mr. Müller, they're gone. Helena and the boys aren't at the orphanage." Oliver felt his blood run cold. He immediately called Adrian and a team of private investigators. The search began at airports, bus stations, and border crossings. The disappearance was reported to the authorities, who issued a national alert to locate the children. For 3 agonizing days, there was no clue. Luca, realizing the gravity of the situation, became silent and introspective. "Are they coming?" "Back, Dad?" he asked one night as Oliver tucked him in. "Go, son, I promise I'll find you." On the morning of the 4th day, Oliver received an unexpected call. "Mr. Müller, this is Elias." Oliver nearly dropped the phone in surprise. "Elias, where are you? Are you guys okay?" "We are at Aunt Helena's farm, near Atibaia. She has been crying since yesterday and doesn't want to eat anything. We are worried." The relief of knowing they were okay was soon replaced by concern for the emotional state of Helena and the boys. "Elias, can you give me the exact address? I'll come over right now." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Aunt, Helena said you're going to take us away, that you're going to separate us." "No, Elias, that's not true. I would never separate you." "But will you take us away from Aunt Helena?" Oliver closed his eyes, searching for the right words. "Elias, I am your father. You, Matteo, Leon, and Luca. You are brothers, quadruplets. You were born on the same day to the same mother. Aunt Helena said that yesterday. She told us everything. She said she lied because she was afraid of losing us. And what did you feel when you found out?" Another long silence. "I was mad, really mad. But then, she was always our mother, you know. She protected us when we were babies. She said you didn't know about us, that it wasn't your fault." The maturity in the 10-year-old's voice surprised Oliver. "She's right about that. If I'd known about you, I would have moved worlds to find you." "Are you going to arrest Aunt Helena?" The question was direct, fraught with fear and apprehension. Oliver knew his answer would define his future relationship with his children. "No, Elias. I'm not going to arrest Aunt Helena. She made a mistake, but she spent 10 years fixing that mistake, taking care of you with love. What do you think about talking about this in person? You, your brothers, Aunt Helena, and I." After a brief silence, Elias agreed and gave the address. Oliver informed Adrian of the situation, asking him to cancel the police alert. He did not want the first meeting with his children to be mediated by authorities. The farm in Atibaia was simple, but well kept, a wooden house surrounded by fruit trees, with a small vegetable garden and a lake in the background. Oliver arrived, alone, leaving Luca with Greta. That first meeting needed to be just between him, Helena, and the triplets. When he parked the car, He saw three identical boys standing on the porch, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Elias, the bravest, stepped forward. "Are you really our father?" he asked directly. Oliver felt tears form in the corners of his eyes. "Yes, Elias, I am your father." Matteo, always the most reflective, crossed his arms defensively. "Why have you never come looking for us before?" "Because I was told you hadn't survived," Oliver replied honestly. "I only found out the truth recently when I met Elias at the orphanage and noticed the resemblance to Luca." "What about Luca?" asked Leon, the most sensitive of the three. "Does he know about us?" "You know, and he's really excited to get to know you guys better. He's always wanted siblings." The three exchanged glances as if in silent conversation. Finally, Elias made the gesture that Oliver would never forget. He extended his hand to him. "Aunt Helena is inside. She is very scared." Oliver followed the boys into the house. On the couch in the small living room, Helena sat, her eyes puffy from crying. When she saw Oliver, she stiffened. "Please," she whispered, "don't take them from me." Oliver sat in a chair across from her, while the boys settled protectively beside Helena. "Helena, what you did 10 years ago was wrong. What you did yesterday running away with them was wrong too." She lowered her head, defeated. "But," Oliver continued, "what you did during those 10 years, loving and caring for my children as if they were your own, was something for which I can only be eternally grateful." Helena looked up, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't want to deprive my children of someone they love and who loves them so much. I don't want this situation to be resolved in a court of law with accusations and hurt feelings." "And what would it be like then?" she asked cautiously. "The boys would come to live with me and Luca. It's their right to grow up together, as brothers in their father's house." Oliver paused, looking directly at her. "But you would still be a part of their lives. Not as the director of the orphanage where they lived, but as someone special, someone who loved them when no one else could." Matteo was the first to react. "Are you serious? Could Aunt Helena visit us?" "More than that," Oliver replied. "She could spend weekends with you, attend important events, be part of the family we're creating." Helena covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "Why? Why would I do this after everything I've done?" "Because it's not about me or you," Oliver replied simply. "It's about them, and they love you." Leon stood up suddenly and ran to hug Oliver, followed by Elias. Matteo hesitated a little longer, but ended up joining his brothers. Helena watched the scene with a mixture of sadness and relief. "I accept," she said finally. "If that's what you boys want, I accept." And so it was that a week later, Elias, Matteo, and Leon entered the Müller mansion for the first time, carrying small suitcases with their most precious belongings. Luca was waiting for them anxiously at the entrance, a huge welcome sign in his hands. Adapting would not be easy. The contrasts between the lives they had led up until then were stark. While Luca had grown up in luxury and comfort, the triplets had a modest upbringing, sharing everything with other children in the orphanage. The first few weeks were marked by discoveries, strangeness, and some conflicts. Matteo, the most resistant of the three, used to tease Luca about his privileges. "You never had to share anything, right? You always had everything just for yourself." Luca, unable to fully understand his brother's resentment, tried to make up for it by offering his toys and games. "It's all ours now. We can share everything." Elias, on the other hand, adapted more quickly. Curious and communicative, he was always asking questions about the mother he had never met. What was she like? Do I have her laugh and the way she walked? Oliver did his best to satisfy this curiosity, showing photos and videos of Isabel, sharing stories about when they met in college, how she loved classical music and had a special talent for drawing. Leon, the most sensitive, alternated between moments of excitement about his new life and periods of nostalgia for the routine of the orphanage. He missed the other children, the set schedules, the simplicity. Helena would visit on the weekends, always bringing small gifts and news from the orphanage. Her presence helped ease the transition, serving as a bridge between the boys' past and present. One Sunday afternoon, while the four brothers were playing in the garden and Helena was helping Greta prepare lunch, Oliver received an unexpected call. "Mr. Muller, this is Hannah Santos from the Children and Youth Court. I received an anonymous tip about the situation of the boys Elias, Mateo, and Leon. We need to schedule a visit as soon as possible." The news came as a bombshell. Someone had reported the situation to the authorities. Perhaps a hospital employee who feared being implicated in the scheme, perhaps someone from the orphanage concerned about the boys' sudden disappearance. Oliver called Helena and explained the situation. She turned pale. "They're going to arrest me. They're going to take the boys away from both of us." "No, they won't," Oliver assured her. "We'll face this together. We'll tell the truth, the whole truth, about the medical error, about your decision to protect them, about our current arrangement." "What if that's not enough?" Oliver looked out the window, watching the four boys playing ball. They looked so alike, but each had their own distinct personality. Within a few weeks, they had begun to form a bond that seemed to have existed forever. "It has to be enough, Helena. I won't let them tear my family apart again." The visit was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Oliver hired the best family law attorneys. Helena provided all the necessary documentation for the boys, including school and medical records, that proved they had always been well cared for. The night before the visit, Oliver gathered his 4 children in the living room. "Some people will be coming to talk to you tomorrow," he explained calmly. "They want to make sure you're happy and well taken care of here." "Is it because of Aunt Helena?" asked Elias, always perceptive. "Because she brought us to the farm without telling?" "Anyone?" Oliver nodded. "Partly, yes, but also because this whole situation is complicated. When adults make mistakes, sometimes other people need to check in on the kids involved." "Are they going to take us away?" Leon asked, tears in his eyes. "Not if I can help it," Oliver promised. "And I'll do everything in my power to keep the 4 of you together, with Aunt Helena still a part of our lives." Luca, who had been quiet until then, suddenly stood up. "It's not fair, we just met." Oliver pulled his son into a hug. "I know, son, it's not fair, but sometimes we have to face difficult situations to prove that we deserve to be together." That night, Oliver couldn't sleep. He kept mentally going over all the arguments he would use, all the evidence he would present, all the legal resources he would use if the decision was not favorable. When the sun rose, he was already on his feet, preparing for the battle that could define the future of his newly formed family. The visit by social worker Hannah Santos was thorough and tense. She interviewed each of the boys separately, then Helena, Greta, and finally Oliver. She observed the interactions between the children, took photos of the house, checked the bedrooms, the pantry, and the medications. Nothing escaped her critical. "Mr. Miller," she said at the end of the visit, "this is an extremely unusual situation. I will need to take the case to the judge. A hearing will be scheduled within 2 weeks." Oliver nodded, trying to hide his concern. "We'll do whatever it takes to keep the boys together." "You must understand that this is not always what the court decides. The welfare of the children comes first. And their well-being is to be together," Oliver insisted, "with their father and the woman who raised them for 10 years. Hannah didn't respond, just writing something down on her clipboard. The next 2 weeks were the longest of Oliver's life. He and Helena tried to maintain a normal routine for the children, but it was impossible to completely hide the tension. Elias, always the most perceptive of the 4, would often find one of the adults whispering worriedly on the phone or reviewing documents. "It's going to be okay, right?" he asked Oliver one night as he was being put to bed. Oliver forced a smile. "I'll do everything I can, Elias, I promise." The room the triplets shared was spacious, decorated with care by Oliver so that each one had their own personal space. Next to Elias's bed was a photo of Helena with the 3 of them. Next to Mateo's was a guitar that Oliver had given him when he discovered his interest in music. Next to Leon's was a small bookshelf with adventure books, his passion. "If I have to choose between staying with you or with Aunt Helena, I won't be able to," Elias confessed, hugging the pillow. "You won't have to choose," Oliver assured him, stroking his son's hair. "We're all on the same side now." The hearing date finally arrived. Oliver hired a babysitter to look after the boys, as neither he nor Helena wanted to expose them to the formal courtroom environment. Adrian, the lawyer, was waiting for them at the entrance to the courthouse. "Ready?" he asked, adjusting his tie. "As much as possible," Oliver replied, lightly squeezing Helena's hand, which was visibly shaking. The courtroom was intimidating, with its solemn architecture and charged atmosphere. Dr. Hugo Gartner, who had returned from Canada especially to testify, waited in a separate room. Helena's presence had come as a surprise to him, as he had expected her to be Oliver's adversary, not his ally. When the judge entered, everyone stood up. Dr. Eric Mendonça was known for his strict approach to cases involving children. His stern gaze swept the room, lingering briefly on each face. "We are here to settle the case of the children Elias Mateo and Leon Keller, supposedly biological children of Mr. Oliver Müller, and who have been in the care of Mrs. Helena Keller. For the past 10 years, his voice was deep and penetrating. This case involves serious charges: medical malpractice, document falsification, and embezzlement of property by an incompetent person. Oliver felt Helena stiffen beside him. "Before I hear from the lawyers, I would like to hear from the parties involved." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Müller, please explain how you discovered that the children were your biological children." Oliver stood up and told the whole story, from Luca's birth and the supposed loss of the other babies, to the moment he met Elias at the orphanage and noticed the striking resemblance. He explained his investigation, the trip to Canada, and how he gradually put the pieces of the puzzle together. "And after finding out all of this, what was your reaction to Ms. Keller?" the judge asked. "I was furious at first," Oliver admitted candidly. "But as I got to know the boys better, I realized that she had raised them with genuine love. She protected them when she could have simply abandoned them. So we came to an agreement that would allow her to remain a part of their lives." The judge made some notes before addressing Helena. "Mrs. Keller, why did you decide to take these children and register them as yours?" Helena took a deep breath before answering. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I was in the delivery room that night. I saw 3 of the babies declared stillborn and separated from the first. Minutes later, I realized they were alive and breathing. When I tried to alert the medical staff, Dr. Gartner told me to be quiet. They said they had already registered the deaths and that it would be a scandal if the truth came out." Helena paused, her eyes filling with tears. "I panicked. I couldn't allow those babies to be put up for adoption separately, without their father knowing about them. I decided to take them with me and care for them until I found a solution. But over time, they became my family. I loved them too much to let them go." "And why did you run away with them recently?" the judge asked. "Out of fear," Helena replied, wiping away a tear. "Afraid of losing them forever. Afraid of going to prison and never seeing them again. It was a mistake, I know. But at that moment it seemed like the only option." Dr. Hugo Gartner was the next to testify. He confirmed Helena and Oliver's version of events, taking his share of the blame for falsifying the medical records. "It was a terrible mistake which haunted my conscience for 10 years, he confessed, visibly shaken. "I lost my career, my reputation, all because of this impulsive decision." But the real victims were these children and Mr. Müller, deprived of their company for so long. After the main testimonies, the prosecutor in the case, Dr. Laura Hoff, presented her considerations. "Your Honor, this is an unprecedented case. Ms. Keller committed serious crimes, regardless of her good intentions. She deprived a father of knowing his children for 10 years. She falsified documents. She lied continually." The prosecutor adjusted her glasses, looking directly at Helena. "However, we also need to consider that she provided exemplary care for these children. The psychological reports indicate deep emotional bonds between the boys and Mrs. Keller. Severing them completely would be traumatic." Adrian, Oliver's lawyer, then presented the agreement they had worked out. Primary custody for Oliver, with full visitation rights for Helena. Psychological supervision for all involved during the transition period. Regular family meetings to ensure the boys' well-being. After hearing all the arguments, the judge called a 1-hour recess to deliberate. Oliver and Helena waited in silence in a private room, each lost in their own thoughts. "Do you think it will work?" Helena finally asked, breaking the tense silence. You have to, Oliver replied, for them. When they returned to the courtroom, the judge was already waiting for them. His expression was serious, impenetrable. This case represents one of the greatest challenges of my career, he began. On the one hand, we have undeniable crimes, committed 10 years ago and perpetuated over time. On the other, we have 4 children whose well-being must be our absolute priority. The judge removed his glasses, lightly massaging the bridge of his nose. The reports from the social worker and psychologists are clear. The boys, Elias, Matteo, and Leon, have a deep bond with Mrs. Keller, the only mother they have ever known. At the same time, they have shown enthusiasm for meeting their biological father and brother, reconnecting with their origins. Helena squeezed Oliver's hand under the table. Considering all factors, I hereby determine that primary custody of the minors Elias, Matteo, and Leon Müller be granted to the biological father, Mr. Oliver Müller. Oliver closed his eyes in relief. Helena lowered her head. However, the judge continued, recognizing Ms. Helena Keller's pivotal role in the lives of these children, I grant her broad visitation rights, including alternate weekends and active participation in decisions related to the minors' education and health care. Looking up at Helena, the judge added, regarding the criminal charges against Ms. Keller, considering the extraordinary circumstances of the case and her evident remorse, I order the conditional suspension of the proceedings, provided that she strictly complies with all the determinations of this court, especially in relation to shared custody with Mr. Müller. The tension that gripped Helena's body visibly eased. She wouldn't be arrested. She wouldn't completely lose contact with her boys. This court will establish a schedule of supervision by social workers for the next 12 months to ensure that the transition occurs in a healthy manner and that the rights of all parties are respected. All involved, including Brother Luca, will be required to participate in family therapy. Banging his gavel, the judge closed the session. I sincerely hope that they can rebuild this family that was torn apart by error and secrecy. These children deserve to know the whole truth about their origins and have the opportunity to love all those who love them. As they left the courthouse, Oliver and Helena embraced briefly, a gesture that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. They were not friends, perhaps never would be, but they were united by their love for the same 4 boys. Thank you, Helena whispered. I really thought I'd never see you again. They need you, Oliver replied simply, and I need them to be happy. On the way home, Oliver stopped at the most complete toy store in town. He wanted to bring the boys something special, a symbol of the new beginning they would have together. He chose 4 braided cord bracelets, each with the initials of the 4 brothers intertwined. They were simple, but they perfectly represented what he wanted to convey. No matter what had happened, they were a family now, united by bonds that no one else could break. When he arrived home, he found the 4 brothers anxiously waiting in the living room for the outcome of the hearing. Their little faces reflected the fear of being separated again. So, Dad, what did the judge decide? Luca asked, saying what everyone wanted to. Dunno. Oliver smiled, sitting in the center of the room and inviting them to come closer. The judge has decided that you will be staying together, Oliver announced, watching the 4 boys' faces light up simultaneously. Here, in this house, with Aunt Helena visiting us regularly. Elias, Matteo, and Leon exchanged looks of relief, while Luca jumped up and down with joy. And won't Aunt Helena go to jail? asked Leon, always the most worried. No, son, she made mistakes, but the judge understood that she did it to protect you. She will be able to visit you most weekends and participate in important events in your lives. Oliver took the small box with the bracelets out of his pocket. I brought something for you, a symbol of our new beginning as a family. He handed over the bracelets, each of which had the initials L, G, E, and T intertwined. The boys put them on immediately, admiring the simple but meaningful gift. We're a family now, Luca declared, extending his hand toward the center of the circle they had formed, all together. The other 3 placed their hands over Luca's, sealing the silent pact of union. In the days that followed, the Müller mansion took on a new energy. The presence of the triplets transformed the previously silent house into a space full of life and movement. Oliver reorganized his work schedule to spend more time with his children, determined to make up for lost time. Helena strictly complied with the agreement, visiting the boys at the established times and remaining present without interfering with Oliver's parental authority. Little by little, a relationship of mutual respect began to form between the two adults. Adapting to their new school was one of the biggest challenges for Elias, Matteo, and Leon. Accustomed to a simpler education at the orphanage, they felt intimidated by the rigor and expectations of the elite school Luca attended. "I won't be able to keep up," Matteo confessed after his first week of classes. "The other kids know a lot more than I do." "It's just a matter of time," Oliver assured them, hiring private tutors to help them with the transition. "You're smart, you'll catch up quickly." Luca, in turn, took on the role of guiding his brothers in their new environment. Proudly, he introduced them to everyone as "my triplet brothers," patiently explaining the unwritten rules of the school and defending them when necessary. One afternoon, while the four of them were playing in the garden, Luca was called on the phone by Greta. When he returned, he seemed thoughtful. "It was Rodrigo's mom," he explained, "asking if I'm still going to his birthday party on Saturday." "And you will go?" asked Elias. "I don't know, it's just that Aunt Helena is coming on Saturday to spend the day with you. I wanted to stay too." Leon smiled, touched by his brother's loyalty. "You can go to the party, Luca. We'll be here when you get back." "Yeah, it's not like we're going to disappear," Matteo joked. Luca didn't look convinced. "But what if you need me?" "We'll always need you," replied Elias, the most articulate of the triplets. "But we also need to learn to do things separately. Sometimes we're brothers, not Siamese." The observation provoked laughter from everyone, easing the tension of the moment. Luca took the advice and went to the party, while the triplets spent a pleasant day with Helena, who took them for a picnic in the park. That night, when Luca returned, he found the brothers in the game room, playing video games with Oliver. He joined them quietly, as if he had never left, reaffirming what Elias had said. They could do things separately, but they would always come back together. 6 months passed. The Müller house had completely transformed. The boys' rooms reflected their distinct personalities. Elias's was organized and had posters of his favorite athletes. Matteo's, with his guitar always nearby and music books scattered about. Leon's, with shelves full of adventure books and a desk where he wrote his own stories. And Luca's, with electronic games, but also with new interests that he had developed thanks to his brother's influence. In Oliver's office, a large photograph took pride of place. The 4 smiling boys, taken on the day the legal adoption was finally finalized, confirming what the DNA had already proven. Beside it, a smaller photo showed Isabel, eternally young, smiling as if blessing the family she had never known in its entirety. One Sunday afternoon, as the boys played soccer in the garden, Oliver and Helena watched from the porch. Their relationship had evolved into a respectful partnership, centered on the well-being of the 4 brothers. "Have you ever thought about what it would be like if none of this had happened?" Helena asked, watching the boys run and laugh. "If they had grown up together from the beginning." "I think about it every day," Oliver admitted. "But I also think about how much worse it could have been. What if you hadn't protected them? What if they had been separated into different adoptions scattered across the country? We might never have found them." Helena nodded silently. They both knew that despite all the mistakes and lies, the end result had been the best possible under the circumstances. "They're settling in well," she said, changing the subject. "Elias seems to have found his place on the school football team." "Yes, and Leon is excelling in literature. The teacher said she's never seen anyone with such an imagination for stories. As for Matteo, he's still resisting," Helena added, knowing well the temperament of the most rebellious of the triplets. "He was always the most suspicious, the one who tested the limits the most at the orphanage." "He's getting better," Oliver assured. "Yesterday he asked me for help with his math homework. It was the first time he's come to me on his own initiative." The sound of a heated argument interrupted their conversation. In the garden, Matteo and Luca were arguing over a play, while Elias tried to mediate and Leon watched apprehensively. "You always have to be right," Matteo shouted, pushing Luca lightly. "It's not a question of being right, it's a question of rules." Luca defended himself. Oliver stood up, ready to intervene, but Helena stopped him with a gesture. "Let them figure it out," she suggested. "It's part of it." To the surprise of both, it was Elias who resolved the situation. "Hey, you two. We're brothers, remember? Let's not fight over a game." Matteo looked down, embarrassed. Luca held out his hand, offering a truce. Within seconds, the four of them were laughing again, the brief conflict forgotten. "They'll be fine," Helena murmured, more to herself than to Oliver. A year after the hearing, the Muller family gathered for a special celebration, the quadruplets' 11th birthday. It was a simple party in the mansion's garden, attended only by close friends, including Helena, who had become a constant and welcome presence in family life. During the party, Oliver noticed something that moved him deeply. For the first time, the four boys were beginning to develop their own individualities, without fear of being different from each other. Elias had cut his hair shorter. Matteo wore a leather bracelet he had received from a friend at school. Leon had exchanged his glasses for a model he had chosen himself, and Luca had abandoned his obsession with expensive designer clothes, preferring a more relaxed style. While the boys ran around the garden with their friends, Oliver took advantage of a quiet moment to show Helena something he had kept for months. "I found this among Isabel's things," he said, handing her an envelope. "I think you should see it." Helena carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and an ultrasound photograph clearly showing 4 tiny fetuses. "Did she know?" Helena asked, astonished. "Apparently, yes. The doctor had detected the multiple pregnancy in the 5th month, but we decided to keep it a secret from everyone. Isabel wanted to give her a big surprise after the birth." Helena began to read the letter, written by Isabel a few weeks before the birth. "My beloved Oliver, if you're reading this, something didn't go as planned. I know the thought of raising 4 babies on your own must seem daunting, but I have complete confidence in your ability to be the wonderful father I've always dreamed of for our children. 4 little miracles are on the way, 4 lives that we have created together. Each one will carry a little bit of us, a continuation of our love that not even death can interrupt. If I'm no longer here, please tell them how much I loved them, even without knowing them. Tell them that I dreamed about each of them, that I imagined their smiles, their first words, their first steps. And remember, my love, where there is love, there will never be loneliness. The 5 of you will be an incredible family, complete in itself. With all my heart, Isabel." Helena carefully folded the letter, handing it back to Oliver with trembling hands. "Why are you showing me this now?" Oliver looked at the boys who were playing happily. "Because I want you to understand that I no longer hold grudges. The past is behind me. What matters is that they are together now, just as Isabel would have wanted." Helena nodded, moved. "Thank you for allowing me to continue in their lives. You are part of this story, Helena. For better or for worse, you are part of the family we have built." A joyful shout from Luca caught both of their attention. The 4 boys came running towards them. "Dad, Aunt Helena, come see what we found in the basement." The 4 of them looked excited, their identical faces expressing the same childish enthusiasm. Oliver and Helena stood up, following them into the house. "What did you find out this time?" Oliver asked, smiling. "Old photo albums," Leon explained. "There are a lot of pictures of you with our mother." "We want to see what she was like," Elias added. "And hearing stories about her," added Matteo, who had gradually accepted Oliver as a father. Helena smiled, touched by the scene. Slowly, the boys were building their complete identity, integrating the past they had never known with the present they lived. That night, after the party, when all the guests had left and Helena had returned home, Oliver gathered his 4 children in the living room. It was time for a ritual they had developed over the last few months, the bedtime story, usually an adventure invented by Leon or a story from Isabel's life, told by Oliver. "I have a special story today," he announced. "The story of how your mother found out she was having 4 babies all at once. The boys settled in, eager for the story. Oliver looked at each of them, Elias, the protector, Matteo, the rebel, Leon, the dreamer, and Luca, the conciliator, and felt a rush of love so intense it nearly took his breath away. She found out during a routine checkup, Oliver began, watching the four boys' attentive eyes. The doctor gave them an ultrasound and said, "Isabel, Oliver, you're not going to believe what I'm seeing." As Oliver told the story, the boys listened in fascination. For a moment, he felt as if Isabel were there, smiling, seeing what he saw. Four identical faces full of curiosity and love for the mother they had never known. 2 years later, the Müller family's life had found a balance that few would have believed possible. At 12 years old, the quadruplets attended the same school, but each followed their own path. Elias had become captain of the soccer team. Matteo had developed an impressive talent for music. Leon had won a children's literature competition, and Luca had discovered a passion for science and experiments. Helena had resumed her nursing career, working at a children's hospital, but she continued to visit the boys regularly. Her relationship with Oliver had evolved from a tense truce to a genuine friendship, based on mutual respect and a shared love for the quadruplets. One Sunday afternoon, while everyone was having lunch in the garden, Leon asked a question that had been hanging in the air for a long time. "Dad, do you think Aunt Helena could have done everything differently? Tell the truth from the beginning?" Oliver looked at Helena, who had frozen with her fork halfway to her mouth. "I think we all could have done things differently," he replied calmly. "Dr. Gartner and the other doctors could have admitted their mistake. I could have paid more attention to the details of that night. And yes, Aunt Helena could have looked for other solutions." Helena lowered her eyes, but Oliver continued. "But do you know what I've discovered in these last few years? That the past cannot be changed, only accepted. What matters is what we do with the present." Elias, always the most emotional when it came to family, raised his glass of juice. "So let's make a toast to the present, to our crazy family that found each other after so long." Everyone raised their glasses, laughing at the boys' spontaneity. Matteo, who no longer showed the same resistance as before, added, "And to the memory of our mother, who even without being here somehow kept us connected." The toast touched everyone. When they finished lunch, the boys ran off to play video games, while Oliver and Helena remained on the porch, looking out at the garden where so many stories had unfolded over the years. "You know," Helena said after a long silence, "that night in the hospital when I saw the 3 babies being declared stillborn, even though they were alive, something inside me just snapped. It was like the world had gone crazy, like the rules no longer made sense." Oliver nodded understandingly. "I understand. You did what you believed was right in that impossible moment." "Thank you," she replied, "not only for forgiving me, but for allowing me to be a part of their lives. They are the best thing that has ever happened to me." "And mine," Oliver agreed. "They are Isabel's most precious legacy, all 4 of them." That night, when everyone had gone to bed, Oliver went to the room the triplets still insisted on sharing, despite having the option of separate rooms. They were asleep, each in their own bed, but connected even in their sleep. Elias with one arm out of the blanket, as if reaching for something. Matteo curled up like he always did when he was most vulnerable, and Leon with a book still open on his chest. Afterwards, Oliver went to Luca's room, who was also sleeping soundly, the bracelet with the initials of the 4 still on his wrist, even after so much time. Back in his own room, Oliver sat in the armchair by the window, looking at the moon that illuminated the garden. He picked up the photo of Isabel that he kept on the bedside table and looked at it for a few moments. "You were right, Belle," he whispered. "Where there is love, there is no loneliness." The family he and Isabel had dreamed of was finally complete, not in the way they had planned, but perhaps in an even more meaningful way. A family built not just on blood ties, but on choices, forgiveness, and true love. In the years that followed, the quadruplets grew up like any other group of siblings, fighting and making up, competing and supporting each other. Each followed their own path, developing distinct talents and personalities, but maintaining the deep bond that had united them since birth. Helena remained present in their lives, a second mother who loved them unconditionally. And Oliver, the father who almost lost 3 of his children forever, never stopped being grateful for the miracle that had reunited his family. The truth that had been buried for so long found its way to the light, transforming a story of loss and separation into a journey of redemption and love. The bonds that bound the Müllers had been tested and proven to be unbreakable, eternal bonds that not even time or distance could break. When the boys turned 15, Oliver took them on a special trip to the seaside, a place Isabel loved so much. On the sands of the beach, as they watched the sunset, the 5 of them released 5 paper lanterns into the sea, 1 for each of them and 1 for Isabel, lighting the way to a future that was finally no longer shadowed by the secrets of the past. "We're family," Lucas said, hugging his brothers as the lanterns moved away across the ocean. "We always have been," Elias added, "even when we didn't know it." Oliver looked at his 4 children, now teenagers, with his heart overflowing with gratitude. The journey had been long and difficult, but every step, every tear, every moment of uncertainty had been worth it, because in the end, love always finds its way.